let's get Casey's take on the Eagles, kind of a tale of three teams. The team that got off to that 3-0 start, played pretty well. You had that middle of the season that really was ended with that awful Bengals loss. And then towards the end, they started to turn things around and play some solid football here. So future arrow pointing up or arrow pointing down on this 7-9 Eagles team. KC Joyner, Happy New Year.
Hey, Happy New Year to you.
Well, what do you think? Arrow pointing up or arrow? I mean, because we open up the show like this, Casey. The Eagles 7-9 with Chip Kelly, 7-9 Doug Pederson. What's different about these 7-9 teams?
Well, the 7-9 team for Chip Kelly, you could tell by the time he was done that the team didn't believe in the Chip Kelly system, and you could tell that it just wasn't. There wasn't what he wanted, what Kelly wanted out of his system, and the team he wanted to build. It just wasn't working with the organization. So when you're looking at Peterson, what he's doing, is going to work better with the organization. But I'm just seeing a lot of elements. I did some studies on the Eagles' performance after that Bengals debacle, because general managers tend to look at things in 4 quarters of a season. If you look at the fourth quarter of the season, there were a lot of things to like about where this team is and where this team is headed. So I'd say arrow pointing up.
All right, let's start with the offensive line spot here for Philadelphia. You look at the offensive line with Peters, Barber, Kelsey, Brooks, and Lane Johnson. If that's their 5 they go in to next year, are you okay with what their offensive line looked like this year?
Yeah, I'm okay with their offensive line. I've got a little bit to go before I'm finished with the entire season, really close to the end, but Philadelphia is going to rank in the top 5 in the league in my good blocking rate metric that measures how often an offensive line gives its ball carriers quality run blocking. They're going to be right up there with Tennessee at a 45% mark. I mean, that's significant. That's really good. I mean, you're talking better than Dallas. You're talking better than Buffalo. I mean, you're talking they could be that good in that metric. And that's a great place to start. And frankly, their pass blocking, it's tough to measure their passing game this year because after the first 2 weeks of the season, Wentz hit the wall, and he couldn't. It's not. I don't think they were running the same offense later in the year as they wanted to earlier in the year. But still, the Eagles did a solid job. They've got some areas to improve in pass blocking. Over the last quarter of the season, they ranked 30th in that metric. But I think talent-wise, they're a lot better in pass blocking than that metric would indicate. So I think that I don't think they're necessarily going to be a top 10 team in pass blocking, but they're going to get to like upper half of the league in pass blocking and keep up that run blocking. I think that's the kind of team Peterson's going to like.
Yeah, and then obviously, you talk about how their run blocking metrics worked out for them. I guess that's a little bit of an indictment on the play calling.
Yeah, it is. If you don't lean on the running game more often. They were middle of the league in how productive they were when they got good blocking. That's the metric I have, good blocking yards per attempt. You'd like to be close to 10 in that category. They were at 8. It's a little lower than league average. So you want to be more productive there. That may be part of it. You just don't have the backs. The great thing is, this draft is so deep in running backs. I mean, you've got Fournette, you've got Dalvin Cook, you've got McCaffrey, you've got Foreman. Even in the second round, you have Wayne Gallman from Clemson. I mean, you could wait until the second round to get Gallman and still have a solid running back, and he's a power back too. So, I mean, there's a lot of options the Eagles could do to upgrade their rushing attack. Because if you can get a top-notch running back behind this kind of run blocking, man, that turns the tables in the offense. Now you don't have to ask Wentz to do so much.
Casey, are there some fixable areas of concern on this team, areas that didn't perform well but they're close, they just need a little polishing or fixing?
Yeah, there were a couple. I mean, some of the places they did have a few areas where they performed really badly. And again, weeks 14 to 17 is what I'm talking about here, the last quarter of the season. After that Bengals game, we wondered after that game, is this team giving up? Is this team throwing in the towel? And when you start looking at the metrics, you realize, and you look at the tape, look at the metrics, you realize they had some issues, but they definitely weren't giving up. But they ranked 28th in net yards per attempt. In the passing game, they ranked 29th in yards per play. So, I mean, they've got some areas there. But again, if you can get a better running back and you can take more full advantage of this run blocking that they're getting, that number is going to spike up too. And they've also ranked 32nd in the league over the course of the season on defense and how what they did when they gave up good blocking yards per attempt, how often, what kind of production they gave up when they gave up good blocking and defense. So that's an area that usually, if you just get better safety play and you get just a little better shedding of your blocks in your front seven, you can usually make that number a lot better too.
Yeah, you talk about, some of the areas where this team's weak. Wide receiver, running back, it seemed like they had some issues. But cornerback, you look at what they need to fix in the offseason. Where's number one for you? When you looked at this Eagles team, where were they most deficient?
Yeah, I'd have to say cornerback. Al Davis used to say you can't have enough cornerbacks, and he used to think that you built teams on the offensive line first and a cornerback second. If you look at the great teams in NFL history, they usually follow something along the lines of that blueprint. So you've got the offensive line in good shape, build up your cornerbacks, and again, with this many running backs, I still think they wouldn't do badly to take one of those. If they can land one of those 4 backs in the first round, I don't think they'd be in bad shape there, and then run the table on during the rest of the draft and the free agency trying to get cornerbacks, because really, they've got solid cornerbacks. It's just you need to tier them properly. And right now, I don't think they have them tiered properly. I think they have a number 3 corner playing 2, a number 4 corner playing 3. I think if they can just find a couple of guys to fit in along with what they have, I think that'll make for better fits, and now you'll suddenly start to see a lot better defense.
What's your take on the enigma that seems to be Zack Ertz? Slow starts, huge games down the stretch. It seems like every season finale he has like double-digit catches and 130 yards and a couple of touchdowns. How much is the continuity with the quarterback tied to the production to a guy like a tight end like Zack Ertz, where he has not played with the same quarterback for 2 years in a row?
Yeah, and the thing is you also, when you're talking tight ends, they get involved in the short passing game and they get involved in the medium passing game, the regular vertical passing game. They don't get involved in stretch verticals. You don't usually see them on passes 21 or more yards downfield. You don't only see tight ends get involved in that. So usually you would think that if you've got problems with your vertical passing game, you can still lean on your tight ends. And I think the Eagles this year just gave up on the vertical passing game for a number of reasons. That limited what Ertz does, because it's either, you can run him on dink and dunk throws, but I think his if you look at his metrics, his value is on vertical passes. So I think if they can get the run game going, now you can start leaning a little more on your vertical passing game. You don't have to say, hey, you need to stay in and block for the quarterback on passing plays, or, you need to run, a little check down to the quarterback or to be safe, because we can't pass block for him. If we can run the ball better, we can make defenses more honest. Make them more honest. Now we can get them involved in the vertical game. So I think it's all going to revolve around getting better production out of that running game.
Casey, you mentioned the word vertical passes. If you were Howie Roseman, would you target Deshaun Jackson? How much would he help Carson Wentz in this offense?
The thing is you want to solve problems through free agency, and you want to solve problems in the draft. And I think that you can more easily if you want immediate impact in your passing game, you don't usually want to go wide receivers. You can have, we've seen in the last few years where wide receiver can come in year one and can make an impact. But most of the time, receivers take a couple, 3 years. They're more developmental projects. So you really want to say, if we want immediate passing game impact right now, I'd put Jackson high on the list, get him in here, and then you can have a couple years of production and start developing those other receivers who you have both on the roster now, who you can get in the draft, and say, okay, now we've got other players we can develop up there, because I just don't think that if you say we're going to draft our way to success in the vertical passing game, I think it's going to take too long, and you're going to have another year like we did this year.
I guess it helps that he was here, knows Pederson well, knows this offense pretty well. There's a lot of chatter around here that he wants to come back and they want him to come back, but it seems that his skill set is something this team is sorely lacking, and the fact that he already knows the personnel and the coaches in this offense would be a jump start.
Yeah, and the thing is some offenses, like if you're looking at Atlanta, you look at Julio Jones, they want him to get 200 targets, right? I mean, they want him to be the workhorse receiver. You look at a lot of teams, that's who they have. Antonio Brown, the Steelers, that's what they want. Jackson's not that guy, but that's not what the Eagles need him to be. Fine, you've got Matthews to go catch 100, get 100, 125, 150 of your quarterback, say 500 targets. Okay, you got 350 left. Okay, you throw another 150 to your tight ends. Okay, can I get 200 left? You don't need him to catch maybe 100, 125 targets. You can, throw the rest of the targets in other places. You don't need him to be that 200 target guy. So you're in that kind of an offense too, where another team might want to say you are our high volume guy, and that's just not what he is. And the Eagles don't need him to be that.
Casey, were you disappointed in the Eagles' front four on defense? Did you anticipate more of a pass rush in Jim Schwartz's system that you got from this crew?
Yeah, more of a pass rush. I mean, in that last 4 weeks of the season, they were 19th in sack percentage, and the thing, they didn't get the kind of pass rush you'd expect. But then again, he almost admitted that, hey, we just gave up on the blitz because we knew we couldn't leave our corners on the island. So he basically telegraphed to the other team, look, we're not going to do much blitzing because we don't have the people to do that. And then you're starting to let the other team know we're going to play a certain type of defense. I was still more concerned about, though, what they give them that good blocking yards per attempt. Again, they may end the season. I've got a little more study to do, but they may end the season as the worst team in good blocking yards per attempt, and that's, that means when you're giving up, to give you an example, They gave up this year 10.3 yards per attempt whenever they gave up. The team got good blocking. The best teams in that category are going to give up like 7 yards per attempt. So you're talking that's 300, 400, 500 yards extra yardage that you're giving up that you don't have to give up if your linebackers can shed their blocks and keep a good blocking play to maybe 6 or 7 yards versus getting a breakaway play and getting 15, 20, 30 yards way often. So I think the Eagles, that's one area where if the Eagles can improve that, you improve 300 yards in that category, even 250 yards, that might be a win in and of itself just with that category alone.
A lot of questions this offseason for this team moving forward. We're going to get into the playoff games as well. But you look at a 7-9 Eagles team, do they look like a team that's ways off, far off from competing? I don't know if they're going to be a Super Bowl contender in 1 year, but do they look like they are years away, or do they seem like they're pretty close to maybe, getting over that hump? They haven't made the playoffs in 3 years.
Okay, look at an offense where now you got Wentz, you've got, say, a good running back, one of those 5 we talked about earlier. You've got that person plus, maybe whoever else you have on the roster now. Okay, so you've got a solid running back core. Okay, you've got wide receiver. Let's see, you get Jackson, so you've got your vertical threat. You've got a good, some good slot receivers on this team. So you start looking at that and going, where am I seeing a weakness in this offense? I'm not seeing a weakness in this offense. I'm seeing a good offensive line. If you just add 2 good skill position players on offense, you've got to make it a really good offense. You look at defense and you go, okay, if they just improve that good blocking yards per attempt, their run defense is solid, maybe not great, but solid. All right, I can start looking at a number of categories and go, okay, where am I seeing big weaknesses on this team? If you just address a couple of areas and maybe add a couple of cornerbacks in there, if you just had just 3 or 4 players, you start looking at going, okay, injuries could hurt that, but just from a starting core perspective, I would say this is a playoff caliber team. So no, I like where they're at, but they just had to make sure that the coach and the front office are on the same page personnel-wise, which I happen to think they probably are.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Doug Pederson, I don't know what your take was on him in year number 1 here. He got criticized a lot, play calling, decisions. He was very aggressive. A lot of 4th downs, a lot of times where they could have kicked field goals, they decided to go for it.
Did it on Sunday, 4th and 9.
They did it on Sunday. The game that really...
Which I was upset about.
The game that really stood out was the one at Dallas, where they elected not to kick the field goal, and they end up blowing a 10-point game. They had a 10-point lead in that Dallas game on the road with 4.5 minutes left and somehow lost that game. The fact that he was criticized a lot for that. What did you overall see from Doug Pederson as the head football coach?
I wonder if he might be better off. I mean, I know he's supposed to be a great play caller, but there are too many times in offense where we talk about during the season where, hey, they on some of those 4th down plays too, all right, we're going to run a play where a wide receiver is our key block. And you go, why are you letting your wide receivers be your key blocks? And those plays, I think for the Detroit game, if I remember correctly, that's when that happened. There was one of the game where they just had this horrible play call where they asked wide receivers to do those things. So I think sometimes he got so aggressive, he started to ask his players to do things they weren't capable of doing. And if he learns from that, great. But if not, then maybe he needs to, I don't want to say cede play calling to somebody else because, I think that they need to be in the situation where they say, we're not going to ask players to do the things that they're not capable of doing. So I think that was the downside of the aggressiveness. The upside is, I think when you play aggressive like that, you get your players to stay in the contest, stay motivated in later parts of the season. Because that was the big thing. After that Bengals game, there was a sense of, this team might be giving up on their coach and we have to change coaches. And because he plays aggressive, I think it gets the players to be more in tune into we're going to keep trying and we're keep fighting here. So that's the upside of it. But the downside of it is don't ask your players to do what they can't do. If he adds that to some of the other things we were talking about, that's going to be some big pluses too.
Yeah, I do think he's very popular with the players. Casey, does this team have 7-win talent, or did Doug get more out of this roster than most coaches would have?
Oh, a lot of coaches will only got 4. Put Jeff Fisher on this team. What do you think he would have done with it?
Yikes!
I don't think he gets 7 out of this team. I think this team has probably, given their injuries and things this year, I think that 7 wins is a solid job. I think it would be a B, maybe a B+ job. I mean, depending on how kind you want to be about it. So I think it was a solid job, and again, kept them together even after that Bengals debacle. So it's good, but they really just need to get a lot more talent. But the thing is, they've got the quarterback in place. I'm still sold on Wentz, even despite the late season struggles. I think that he's going to develop into a least upper half of the league quarterback in the next couple of years. And whether he hits top 10 is another question, but I think he can get it to upper half of the league. If you can get upper half of the league and you can add some other elements around it, like a strong running attack, you've got the makings of a real playoff team.
So, as we close out on our Eagles stuff, and we'll get into the playoffs in just a minute here, if you are an Eagles fan, 7-9, seeing this, this whole season, do you leave this year satisfied?
Probably not, because again, if they get some of those play calls right, you'd think this is not a year where you've got powerhouse teams. Look at Green Bay, and Green Bay is, I just look at the playoff structure and go, Detroit, Green Bay, the Giants. There's a lot of teams where I look at them and go, they're not that much better than the Eagles. Again, rookie quarterback, so I'm going to preface it by that, and it's tough to make a playoffs with a rookie quarterback, but I'm looking at talent-wise going, they're not a big step behind. Like Dallas, they're okay. And Philadelphia's probably a step behind Dallas. And even Atlanta, that's a team that's got a lot of offense, but they don't have a very good defense, and they're a beatable team. So I'm looking at going, I'm the Eagles. I'm not happy. If I'm an Eagles fan, I'm not happy we didn't make the playoffs. But again, we're not that far away, and given that you're transitioning from where Kelly was, and we saw what happened to Kelly in San Francisco, so we know what that debacle is. You could say we transitioned from where we were when he left to where we are now, and where we might be in the next couple of years. We can add some players in here. I'm probably not dissatisfied, because what happened in San Francisco could have happened in Philadelphia.
All right, wild card round. Just a quick, we'll preview these games a little deeper later on in the week, but I just want to get your initial thoughts on Oakland and Houston. Unfortunately, not the quarterback matchup that the Raiders would have liked.
Yeah, except now the Houston's playing Osweiler, and Osweiler is maybe the worst vertical quarterback in the league. So I think Oakland has a fair chance in that game. I think they actually could win that, but Oakland's going to be one and done team if they get past this matchup.
Detroit and Seattle is the night game on Saturday night. Detroit, one of those teams where maybe if the Eagles had won that game, maybe that's the Eagles are in the playoffs. Detroit isn't.
Yeah, and Detroit, having to go to Seattle, that's a terrible matchup for them for a number of reasons. Although Seattle is not the powerhouse that they've been in past years, they don't. The free safety Earl Thomas is out, so I think they're beatable. The Lions probably only have a 2-10 chance of winning that game. I can't see them pulling a victory in most cases in that situation.
All right, Sunday games. You got the let's start with the AFC. Pittsburgh and Miami. Who's playing quarterback for Miami? Ajayi. You got all sorts of questions entering that one. Pittsburgh's a 10-point favorite.
Yeah, they should be. Given the way their offensive is playing, and the Dolphins' defense, they're abysmal. Their rush defense has been horrible. I think they allowed opposing running backs to gain 100 or more yards in 4 or 5 straight games to end the season. They're terrible. Their run defense, Steelers' run defense, has been a lot better. So Ajayi, he had that big 200-yard game against one of the shooters. That's not going to happen again. So, and I think the Steelers can very quickly go after a weak Dolphins secondary. If the Steelers start putting the foot to the floor, I just don't think the Dolphins have the horses to keep up.
And then Giants-Packers closes things out. The New York Giants, a team that, Eagles fans wonder how they got to that record, but yet Giants fans are thrilled that they're back in the playoffs and think they could do some damage.
The curious thing there is going to be that the Giants have a great vertical pass defense. You got to dink and dunk against them, and usually that would be a good thing against Green Bay, because in past years that's what they were, a vertical passing team with power running. That's who they were. Now Green Bay's been a dink and dunk passing team, and so they're doing different things on offense that I think will complement well to attack the Giants' defense. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Green Bay be able to keep their offensive flow going. And the Giants' offense, even though you've got Shepard and you've got Beckham Jr., you've got a lot of quality receivers, a couple of quality receivers there. Their offense is not playing to that talent level, and their rushing offense has been mediocre. So I know they're still giving carries to Jennings, which, given how Perkins has been playing, it doesn't really make sense. But I think the Giants just don't have enough firepower to go to Lambeau and win.
KC Joyner, Chip Kelly's next football job is coordinator, NFL head coach, college head coach, takes the year off. We never hear from him again.
I think he needs to take the year off, because if you're going to be an NFL coach, is he going to run his system? Because most coaches aren't going to want to run that type of system. If I'm him, I wait for the best college job, because he could have back to Oregon, but I think he needs to take a Jim Harbaugh approach and say, I'm going to go back to the colleges and rebuild my reputation, and then try and go back and get another gig, because he can still win at the college, or what he's doing can actually work there. I just don't know if it can still work in the NFL anymore.
KC Joyner with us. And KC, I saw your tweet about the Atari games. I was laughing when I saw that. Asteroids, Othello, Golf, Street Racer, Defender. Which one of those did you dominate?
I guess if it didn't have Space Invaders on it, that'd be the one. We got our kids in the Atari system for to go a little retro and things. So my eldest likes to play a little Space Invaders. So I'd say that'd be the favorite here in the house. Did
you catch the documentary a couple years ago on Atari?
I'm afraid I didn't. I'll have to look at that up.
It's fantastic. It's on Showtime. It's on Netflix. It's all about the rise and fall of Atari, and basically that there was this rumor that had gone around in the gaming world for years that Atari failed so miserably when they put out the game E.T. that they just buried a bunch of cartridges in the desert.
I did see that,
and so they did an hour-long documentary about the rise and fall of Atari and when it got broken up and sold, and it actually, I'm not going to give it away, but there's a payoff at the end that will be very satisfying. It's called Atari Game Over. I would recommend you watch it.
We will sit down. Our kids are on vacation. We'll definitely sit down and watch that.
Good stuff from KC Joyner here on the Sports Bash at KC Joyner TFS. We'll catch up later on and go a little deeper into the playoff games at the end of the week here on 97.3 ESPN. Happy New Year to you, pal.
Thank you.